5-6 weeks prior to Christmas, and it just said, you know, here's some of the changes that are coming, here's some of the proposed amendments that staff have prepared. And those amendments were prepared in consultation with the temporary sign industry, as well as staff who were processing the permits. And the whole intention of the amendments you'll see today is to make things work a little smoother. There have been some easing of restrictions, primarily for mobile signage. And at the same time, there's going to be some more enforcement being done throughout the whole municipality. And that's why we wanted to talk with your 3 bids today. So we have present, for those who may not know, Quinpool Road, Spring Garden area, as well as downtown Halifax. We felt because of some of the unique issues that many of the business owners in the area have, that we should get you guys together as a group and address them all at once. We've already met with Sackville Drive Business Association, the Downtown Dartmouth Business Association, and we held a public information meeting, I think it was well back in October, just to the general public. We didn't get a great turnout at the public meeting, but that's typically how amendments of this nature go. It's usually those stakeholders who have an interest, such as yourselves, that will generally come out. So we felt it would be valuable if we came out to the bids themselves and had a discussion with you guys as well. Our intention here today is not simply to tell you what we've proposed, but to get some feedback from you, how things have been for the last 3+ years with this bylaw. If you've had any experiences with it, whether they're good or bad, we'd like to hear that as well. And some feedback on the amendments that we've proposed so that we can take that into consideration before we move forward and go back to regional council with the staff report and the proposed amendments to the bylaw. We've also met with the advisory committee to regional council for persons with disabilities. They were heavily involved in the original bylaw, and as you can imagine, persons with disabilities such as those with mobility issues and wheelchairs, visually impaired individuals, some of the signage, particularly the sandwich boards, can cause some issues for them as they're using our sidewalks. So we went back to them with the amendments as well and got some feedback from them, as to their input on it as well. So we've done significant consultations to this point on the bylaw. So moving along, what I'm going to present to you in what I hope is a brief slideshow is an overview of the bylaw in case you're unfamiliar with it, what it proposes, what it does now, what kind of signage is covered by it, and then we'll get into the proposed amendments. There was a handout on the table as you came in. Some of you may not have it actually. Does everybody have a handout when you came in? No. Okay. I put it at the back of the room. I apologize. Hopefully there's enough to go over. There's 19 points on that handout, and what it attempts to do is summarize the big ticket items in the amendments in the bylaw. And so that may generate some discussion here. You may actually have thoughts once this meeting is over. If that's the case, staff here, including myself, will give you our contact information. Call us, email us in the next several weeks, that's fine. And we'll take your comments recorded and have a discussion if need be. I'm going to skip this. This is a similar format that we use for our public meetings, just so that we keep things on track. Just by looking at the audience here today, I don't think we're going to have any troubles keeping this organized. So we'll move right on. I mentioned about 3 years ago, 3 years ago, the new year, that the temporary sign bylaw was adopted by regional council. And at the time, there had been extensive consultations with many of the groups that I already mentioned to get to that point. Council did adopt the bylaw, as it says there, September 26th, and it was approved, taken into effect rather about a month later after that. So what does it do? Signage regulations previous to this bylaw 3 years ago, there were 21 land use bylaws, and they all had a little bit of a different variety of how they addressed signage, temporary signage. And so what this did is it created one bylaw for the whole HRM, since amalgamation, for the whole municipality, so that it was consistent right across the board. There's still different regulations in the land use bylaws for different communities throughout HRM for permanent signage. That's a different ball of wax. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking temporary signage. And the reason why this came up is that staff and the industry who deal with these temporary signs found it cumbersome to meet all the different requirements. So we thought we'd put it all in one package, and as I said, we went through extensive consultations at the time to develop it. And that way there was clarity and consistency provided in that one bylaw. How does it work? Well, there's 4 categories of temporary signs. Signage covered in the bylaw ranges from prohibited signs that might constitute a hazard. So you think of signs that might say stop or signs that say danger that try to get someone's attention to a specific business. Those are deemed to be distracting, particularly for the driving public. So those are prohibited signs. There's inflatable signs that do not require a license, so you think of these big blow-up things that you see advertising some businesses. There's licenses that require, license required, such as mobile signs, sandwich boards, and planter box signs. Those three types of signs require a license. And then there's posters on community kiosks and notice boards. So that's the gamut of the signage that's covered by the bylaw. And for each one of those categories, there's different requirements, and those are specified in the bylaw. That's why it's good that we have Andrew and Trevor present, because these are the guys that ultimately issue the permits and licenses. Within each of those categories, in the bylaw, there's provisions that address the issues that you see on the screen. And each one of those, applicants for the permits must satisfy before they're issued the license. There's common characteristics of signage that are addressed, and they're including but not limited to how big they can be, where they might be located, for how long, as well as their upkeep. And by communicating the expectations of all parties, and that means staff and applicants, the provisions implement the adopted intent of the bylaw that Regional Council had intended for it. And the bylaw further provides for penalties for violations, and as well as that, it also establishes an appeal process to Council. So why are we proposing amendments to this bylaw? 4 points issue why right there. It's been just under 3 years, over 3 years now that it was enacted. During that time, we've gotten the feedback from the industry, as well as staff. Stakeholders in the industry have given staff feedback over those few years. And Council's also directed staff to evaluate the bylaw's effectiveness, and that's partially because councilors are hearing feedback as well from people involved, stakeholders. It might be business owners, it could be the temporary sign industry people, but Council's kind of indicated to the staff that they want to see some amendments done. So on that summary sheet that's going around the room, hopefully many of you have a copy of that now, most of the changes you'll notice they're administrative in nature. And those administrative changes relate to the clarity and the consistency of issuing the licenses. And that's right across the municipality. There's things that we're working on that we call housekeeping matters in there, and those are clarification of definitions, some changes to short-term events, and we can talk about these issues when I'm finished my presentation. But there have been some changes there. And sandwich boards, sorry, I missed my spot. In addition to these housekeeping matters, significant changes to the bylaw include, there's an elimination. This may not apply to many of you with properties that don't have a lot of land frontage, but there's the elimination of what we call the rest period for the mobile signs, those big mobile signs with the changeable face that you see. Usually some people refer to it as the up and down time, when it can be in place and when it has to be taken away. So there's elimination of that rest period, which currently is 60 up, 60 down. That period's gone. The common separation distance has been achieved for mobile signs, which right now is 100 feet, and planter box signs. These are kind of, you'll see some signs that have a little bit of a infrastructure, so to speak, railway ties or landscaping ties around the base, and then there's some landscaping put in. Those are called planter boxes. They need to have a separation per property of 150 feet. We've taken that 100 foot and the 150 feet and got a happy medium of 125, just to keep things simplistic. And there's also an allowance now for third-party signs per business site. I mentioned there's some housekeeping matters. 3 of them are listed there. This whole process, it provides us the opportunity to evaluate the effectiveness and the intent of the bylaw, and that's what I mentioned to some of the people who arrived earlier. This is not just a meeting where we're going to dictate to you, this is the changes and that's it. We don't want to hear anything. We want some feedback from you. If you've got ideas that we may not have thought of, we want to hear that today as well. I'm not going to promise that everything we hear is going to get implemented into the bylaw, but staff will take it into consideration, so that we're not just working alone in our offices. We want to hear how this is working out for business owners, signage industry, and even customers and clients and the bids themselves.